Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications. The following interactive performance is a second-round entry in Chilling Tales for Dark Nights' 4th annual Evil Idol voice acting competition. And you, listener, get to help decide who advances to round 3. Voting is simple. Following the performance, simply click the thumbs up icon on this video if you'd like this contestant to move forward, or the thumbs down if you'd like to see them be eliminated. Voting on this entry will conclude 1 week after the date of its posting. Thank you, and good luck to all of our contestants.
I see his edges. They're there and apparent, but he doesn't notice them. He turns his head and I look away before he sees me. Riding the bus is hard. With my car in the shop, it's the only way to get around. It's not even a real bus. It's like a big family van. It's comfortable and cheap, but also brings you closer to them. Try as I might, I can't look away. It's just all so obvious, but no one seems to notice. Or if they do, they don't let anyone know. It's like we're all playing this big pretend game. I wonder what would happen if it all fell apart. I push the thought from my mind and look out the window, concentrating on the view. We approach my stop and I get off. When your sleep cycle is disturbed, even a little bit, things get strange. It starts off small enough. You're groggy, you stumble a bit, thoughts and feelings seem misplaced. Nothing serious, nothing you can't cure with a pill and caffeine. But the problem can get worse. And when it does, no amount of coffee or medication is going to help. 24 hours without sleep is equatable to being shit-faced. Your motor skills are gone. Every moment is fleeting. It's all bleeding into a continuous hour. Holding on to a thought is like grabbing onto a tree root when you're neck deep in a river. 48 hours without sleep, you can't even stand. Not without constant assistance, that is. Operating a car or anything other than a recliner is not a good idea. Some begin to hallucinate. Exhaustion takes most by this point. They'll be walking and then collapse, unconscious and blissfully asleep. 72 hours without at least a few hours of sleep can kill you. You can't go anywhere or do anything. Because you can't think. And because you can't think, you can't feel enough to care about anything. Except sleep. It becomes an obsession. Your body craves it and begins shutting down most non-vital mental functions. With all cohesion gone, basic communication ceases. Most people can't even lift their heads off their pillow. You become trapped, a prisoner of your own basic needs. The hallucinations at this point are different for every person. Sometimes they persist even after you've finally rested, even after you've talked to someone about them. And yes, even after you've convinced yourself they're not real. Because try as you might, there's lingering doubt. That doubt rests upon your chest as you sleep. Its mouth mutters madness, or so it seems, until you start to listen. The sleeping pills my doctor gave me didn't work. They never did. After the first month, I just stopped taking them. There wasn't any point. I tried a couple of other remedies. The same old folk medicine shit your friends tell you to do. Warm milk, honeycombs. I tried over-the-counter supplements. I tried yoga, meditation, and all that new age crap. But only one thing did the trick. They didn't cure me, but it took the shakes away, smoothed the edges on other people and my own. Frank's house was just up the hill from the bus stop. Frank was 40 years old with a pot belly and constant salt and pepper stubble. He smelled like sour beer and cigarettes, but he was a nice guy. And always had a good story to tell. He looked like what every Dare ad told you a drug dealer looked like, but he made you feel like his grandkid. You could definitely buy weed from worse people. It was after 5 p.m., so he was definitely home. And drunk. Well, that was fine. Just made this errand even shorter. I walked up the same cracked driveway Frank hadn't fixed since I was in high school. I used the knock he told me to use the first time I visited. I heard him stumbling to the door, cursing and spluttering. Yep, definitely drunk. Frank opened the door, face red as a fire truck. He gripped a beer in the door with one hand and a joint in the other. A huge smile cut across his face, which I returned with my own.
Hey, kid. How the fuck are ya?
I laughed and said, "Pretty good, man. Looks like you're having a party."
Hell yeah, I am. Just me and the coon and a case of beer. Hey, you wanna come in? Promise I won't card you for a can.
He told this joke every time he was drunk, which was every time I saw him. It still made me laugh, though. His inflection, coupled with that staggering happiness, made it a fresh delivery every time. Hell yeah, man. Hey, I'm still having trouble sleeping. You got any, medicine? I said, stepping in the door. At this, Frank laughed, long and hard. He laughed so much that his beer spilled all over the place, and he started coughing. He set the beer on a nearby table, gripping it for support. "Come on, Frank. Don't have a heart attack. That'd be a fucked up thing to tell the paramedics." He stopped for a minute, tears almost in his eyes.
Tell him what?
He said, sweat breaking out on his head. I smirked, holding up my hand like a phone. Hello, operator? Yeah, my drug dealer just geeked on me. Can you guys come get him? Oh, where? It's the house that smells like skunk. You can't miss it. At this, Frank laughed so hard that I really did think he was gonna die. It's a couple of beers later and Frank is sitting in his recliner. His coon dog, an old blue tick, is sitting with its head in his lap. Frank's got a smile on his face and is rubbing the dog's ear like it's his kid. I'm sitting on the couch, downing the last can in the case. I toss it on the table, burp, and look at Frank. "Oh, fuck me, man. We drank all your beer." Frank gives a warm smile.
Oh yeah? I guess we did, huh? Well, that's okay. It's always better to drink with company.
I nod and say, "That it is. So, business?" Frank pushes the dog away, wiping his hands on his shirt. He gives a single nod and says,
"Business indeed."
He goes to the other end of the room, where a few garbage bags lay. He pushes them aside and peels back a section of carpet. Then he grips a board and pulls it up, putting it to the side. Frank pulls out a Nike shoebox and walks back, placing it on the table.
"So, you want more of that shit you had last time, or you want to try something new?"
I pause and think. That stuff works pretty well, puts me to sleep for sure. But there's a problem. Frank drops the smile and looks concerned.
"Problem with my shit? Say it ain't so, kid."
I give a shrug and look at him. "You tried it, right?" I say. Frank nods, raising an eyebrow.
"I try everything that comes through. You know that,"
he says. I nod. I've got no reason to believe he's lying. So I decide to tell him the truth. I rub my palms together and say, "Nobody complains about seeing things, nightmares, anything like that?" Frank starts laughing again.
"Every smoker sees shit from time to time. As for the nightmares, well, I haven't heard any complaints. Just you and old farts wanting to rest using it. No offense."
It's my turn to laugh. "Frank, it'd take a lot more than that to piss me off. But you're sure? No complaints, nobody flipping out hard or anything?"
"Swear on my old Boy Scout credo,"
he says. I nod and smile. I reach into my jeans and pull out my wallet. I tug out a few 20s and hand them over. "Give me a dime. Keep the rest as a tip." Frank smiles, palms the money and bags everything up. I didn't know where Frank got his weed. I didn't care. My only concern was that it worked. A long drag with a slow building hit that cradled your brain. Then it put you to bed and tucked the world away. Except for the last few months. My doctor had warned me about trying narcotics. He said that it wouldn't start my sleep cycle. In the long run, he said, it could even build to a dependency. Then I'd be back where I was. I asked him if he'd ever had trouble sleeping his entire life. He didn't know what to say at first, but then admitted that no, he'd never had a problem. Got a full 7 to 8 hours a night. After that, I realized my doctor was probably full of shit. People who get rest, they never understand. They don't get the lengths you'll go. They still think it's as easy as closing your eyes and slipping away. Frank's weed allowed me to do that. Slip away from here. Slip away from a failing body in an alien world. At least it did. At first. I figured it was my body building a tolerance, so I stopped for a few weeks. I slept a total of 14 hours over days. When I started smoking again, the effects lingered into my dreams. I'd never had vivid highs before. I'd never had visions. But something changed. Either with the smoke, or with me. Sometimes when I woke up, I couldn't tell if I was still dreaming. It all seemed like a dream within a dream. It's one thing I never told my doctor. It's something I never told Frank either. And even though it could all come crashing down in moments, I rolled a joint and lit up. The hit was familiar, creeping and warm. My brain wrapped itself in a dense fog. I trudged my way to bed, throwing my body down upon it. I didn't even get to kick my shoes off before I blacked out. It was, without a doubt, the best sleep I'd had in months. When I awoke, I didn't feel tired. I didn't have a headache, nor did I feel any of the familiar pangs. I felt good, rested. I smiled and rose from bed. I looked at my alarm clock. Not that it was going to go off, it was the weekend, but just to see how long I'd been out. I counted down the numbers. 8 hours. A full 8 hours. With no nightmares. I couldn't remember the last time that happened. I walked down the hall into the kitchen. My stomach was rumbling. Munchies made me ravenous. Shoving anything down my throat would suffice. But I wanted to celebrate. 8 hours. I hoped it became a regular thing. I pulled out a pan and greased it. I turned on the heat and grabbed some hash browns and eggs from the fridge. Breakfast for dinner was my favorite. I scarfed it down and put the dishes in the sink. I opened my fridge, putting everything back. Full, I waddled into the living room. I sat on the couch, grabbed the remote, and turned on the TV. Salt and pepper filled the screen. I flipped through the settings, but to no avail. I got up with the curse and walked across the room. I checked the cables, but every one was snug. Fine. I turned off the unit. I grabbed my phone and decided to see if anyone was up. Being an insomniac means making friends with night owls. They're night timers for a reason, too. And the reason is never good. But everyone needs a friend. I spent an hour hitting people up. Through text, through social networks. Nothing. Not a single person responded. But then I noticed something strange. Every status update, every tweet or Big Brother feeding share stopped after 7 p.m. Right after I'd smoked and went to bed. I refreshed the pages, but nothing changed. Weird. But not without plausible explanations, all of which I was too tired to entertain at the moment. Boredom was a much more immediate concern. I decided to stalk the streets for a bit. Even random strangers were better than an empty room. I grabbed my coat and told myself I'd be back in an hour. It was 3 a.m. Not like I'd just stumble into someone and start talking to them. The wind whipped my hood howling down the street. Then it died just a moment later. It was fleeting, brief. It was an odd thing. But all things can feel odd at this hour. When you can't sleep and haven't for a while, things go topsy-turvy. You cease caring how strange things are, because you lack the energy to observe them. Except for the important things. Those become the center of your attention. A momentary roaring obsession. Then, they're gone. The passion dies, brief and fleeting. I snapped back into reality. I didn't know how long I'd been staring at nothing. I shook my head and started walking down the street, casting one glance over my shoulder. Save for the lamps and shadows, the street was empty. Even the derelicts had tucked in. The city had gone to rest. Even the familiar dirge of ambulances and cop cars had died off. The only sound was the soles of my sneakers scuffing across the walk. I was alone. Then up ahead, the back, shoulders, a head, someone else was out. They stood, hands in their pockets facing the street. Though their features were concealed, it was a person. Someone I could speak with. That's all that mattered. I weighed the chances of them being a drug dealer or a bum, or worse. And yet my feet still pushed me forward. Our distance closed. A yard away, I cleared my throat and said, "Nice night, ain't it?" The stranger didn't turn. Didn't move an inch. They just stayed there, facing the street, staring into the shadows. I walked a bit closer, but stayed back. I counted the number of blocks back to my apartment. If there was trouble, I could race back. Then again, maybe they just didn't want to be bothered. I pulled out a pack of cigarettes from my pocket. I flipped the top and pulled one out. I felt around for my lighter, then realized I left it with my pipe, back at the house, several blocks away. "Hey, do you have a lighter?" Nothing. I tapped him on the shoulder. "Hey, do you?" The stranger fell face forward, slamming into the pavement. I'd barely touched him. I was shocked. Just standing there, hands still poised. But as the adrenaline flooded my body, I noticed something. Something odder than the wind, or the feeling the hour gave. The stranger had crumbled, pieces laid scattered about, but it looked like a pot had been smashed. A life-size person pot, complete with clothes and hair which lay crumbled and wilted. There wasn't any blood. They'd just fallen over and broken into pieces. Just like that. I stood there, hand quivering, cig still on my lips. Then I heard the scuffling of feet behind me. A hand gripped my shoulder and wheeled me around. The hand and the scuffling feet belonged to an older man. He was wearing a baby blue uniform, complete with a hat. Beneath the brim, a few white hairs told him more. He did not look happy. He didn't look happy at all. And as I stood there gripping a cigarette, I began to pray. This was officially the weirdest high I'd ever had. Lord, if you can hear me, I'll never smoke again. Ever. The man's grip tightened and he wagged an index finger in my face. His face contorted in rage. He spat words so hard spittle flew everywhere.
What the hell do you think you're doing? You're supposed to be asleep.
He made me sweep it up. Not just that one either. Dozens of them all over the city. And the entire time I'm too afraid to question him. Too afraid to talk to him. I just pushed the broom. I moved the piles of people-shaped bits into a dustpan. Then I emptied them into a bag he'd brought along. I don't dare to ask questions. Not because I don't want to, but because I'm trying not to think. This is a hallucination. I'm writhing on my couch or in an alleyway right now. Frank sold me some bad weed. None of this is real. It's not important. None of this is. It's around the 10th pile when he looks me straight in the eye. He just stands there, staring. He picks his cap up and scratches his brow and lets out a sigh. You've been on the fritz a lot. They all have. I don't know what to say to him. He sighs again, shaking his head and starts walking. I do my best to keep up. I told them your model was wrong. It was unneeded, and you just caused problems. But no, nobody wants to believe the maintenance guy. He points to a pile. I move over and begin sweeping. Like the other piles, I can catch fractures of who or what this was. The iris of an eye reflects in the moonlight. I stifle a gag and sweep it into the dustpan. The man just stands there watching me. I walk over, ready to empty the dustpan, and he says, "See these disposables? No problems. No matter what kind of shit you throw at them. Or they throw at themselves. But you, everything's long term. And that's what's really horrible about your kind." I nod and empty the pan. We do another 11 piles. After the last one, he smiles and adjusts his hat. I hadn't noticed until now, but he looked like the Maytag man. He claps his hands together and smiles. Great. Cleanup is finished. Holding the broom and pan, I force my jaws to move. Can I go home now? The man nods. Sure. Absolutely. He says, knocking dust off his knees. But only after you help with the restock. Then we're done. I rest my hand at my side, still clutching the broom. For a moment, I think about hitting him with it. I imagine his head exploding into shards of dust and clay. My hand grips the broom tighter, and he says, "Don't even think about it. I promise you it's a bad idea." My entire body goes cold. An unsettling feeling sinks into my bowels. Do what?" I ask, feigning innocence. He smirks, wagging a finger. He walked toward an intersection, and I followed. Restocking was even odder than cleanup. And all the while, I just did what I was told. He knew I wanted to hit him. He knew the moment I thought about it. This had to be a dream. The other explanation was inconceivable and terrifying. I just kept my mouth shut. I restocked and didn't dare to think about anything. Restocking involved going to an old battered truck, and very carefully we carried bodies out. Firm, rigid bodies. Lifelike and warm, but unmoving. At least for the moment. We went back to where we'd swept. We placed a body upright at each location. Then the body came to life. It went about its business as though they'd momentarily forgot what it was doing. The maintenance man would pull out a clipboard and make a note. Then we'd move to the next location. Not even once did any of the body's people, for all purposes, notice us. We arrived at the corner, the last body, the one I'd knocked over. We pulled the body out of the truck and positioned it, and faced out towards the street, hands tucked in its pockets, like nothing happened. The maintenance man smiled. He clasped my shoulder again and said, "All done. Ready to go home? My shift's over. I'll walk with you." I nodded, and we turned, walking the blocks back to my house. I dared to speak again then, but only later did I realize I asked the wrong questions. "Who are you?" The man looked at me, smirking. "Oh, you know. I'm just the repair guy. I do touch-ups, cleanups, restocking. Nobody important." We walked in silence. As we neared my house, I stopped and said, "This isn't real, is it? I'm dreaming. I've got to be." The man stopped, looking me in the eye. He reached out, grabbing me by the shoulder. He studied my face for a moment, thinking of what to say. He gave a slow nod and said, "Yeah, kid. It's all a dream. So go back inside and go back to bed. Okay?" I bit my lip. Okay. I will." As I ascended the steps, I heard him cry, "Hey, kid!" I turned, looking down the steps at him. He stood still, hands tucked in his pockets. "Just ignore the seams. If you do, you'll sleep better, and you won't have this dream again. And even better, you'll save me a lot of paperwork." I nodded, turned my door handle, and went inside. I come home one day and my phone is blinking green, but I only had one call, from Frank of all people. It'd been months since I've talked to him. I hit him up and we chat a few minutes. I tell him I found a solution for my sleeping problems. Then quite bluntly tell him I've quit smoking. He sounds hurt, but tells me to come over. He's got a case of beer he wants downed. I smile and tell him I'll be there this weekend. I wasn't lying to Frank, nor was I lying when I told my doctor I didn't need my sleeping pills anymore. I'd slept great the last few weeks. I'd gone back to feeling normal. Not on the fritz. I didn't pay attention to the small things, like the empty juice carton and greasy pan the morning after, but I stopped caring about the important things too. I took a book with me whenever I rode the bus. I sat far enough away from people that I couldn't see every detail, especially their seams. After a while, I convinced myself the seams were never there, that it was all a fantasy, the byproduct of being overstressed. A few times I thought I saw something. I didn't sleep. I'd toss and turn in bed for hours. Then, after I'd given up, I'd grab my coat and step outside. From there, I'd sit and wait. I didn't care how long it took. It was all worth it, just to be sure. just for a solitary glimpse of that baby blue uniform. But, as with all good repairmen, he evaded me. His work went unnoticed. But all things in the city kept moving. Every model went about its work. And nobody ever stopped to think. Nobody dared to dream of what would happen if it all just stopped. If they saw the seams. And at last, it all just broke down.
Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Steve Taylor, reminding you that if you haven't already, don't forget to cast your vote for this contestant via either a thumbs up or a thumbs down vote. New entries will be posted throughout the month. Be sure to tune in and vote for each of them and help decide who becomes the next evil idol. Until next time, turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling tales for dark nights.